Hi, I'm Jiří Staniševský. I'm working in Salsita as a full stack developer, and I would like to present today how to build a configurator in 40 minutes. It's going to be a presentation about how easy it is, well, relatively easy it is to build a new 3D configurator. I will be using a workspace configurator for new Salsitas as an example. It should demonstrate the power of our SDK, which we have been working on for a while, and it should be kind of visually catching, I hope. But I'm a UI lame, so don't expect miracles. But using the SDK is pretty easy to make something pretty interesting. And we will be also modeling some complex dependencies between options that we will be allowing in the configurator. So what are we going to use? So as already mentioned, that we are going to use the SDK. This is the package here actually represents the whole configurator SDK. You can look up some details on NPM or in our repository. There is pretty thorough documentation already on how to use it. But I will just start now, and this is what I will use. I will actually ask Yarn to create a new project for me using create React app and a specific template which we have implemented. As you can see, I'm using alpha version, which is something which I have released yesterday just because of this presentation. The reason is that I want to show you some new features which are not yet released, and they are not yet merged to develop either, so it's just a work in progress. So expect some bugs, but mostly it's working. I tested. Hopefully it will work this time as well. So let's go. So let's do it. So let's start now the bootstrapping process, because it will take a while. So I will just use this the exact command that is in the presentation. And I will let create React app work for a while. So we can move it. And in between, we can discuss more about. Well, I can show you more what the configurator should look like in the end. So we have these requirements. We want to be able to change the color of the table. I mean, you can imagine what workspace is, right? It's just a place in Salsita where you have your table, your chair, your computer, and stuff. So once you join the company, you can say whatever you want there, and Janko or Simona buys the stuff, and Janko then takes his screw and assembles everything, screwdriver, sorry, and then you just come and magically your table is ready. So we want to automatize this a little bit, so I implemented this configurator for Salsita workspace. So what we wanted to do is to be able to change the color of the table, to change the table dimensions, at least small and big, large. We want you to be able to choose between basic and comfortable chair, between laptop and desktop PC. We want to be able you to be able to choose whether you want an external monitor or you want two of them, or you don't want any of them. You can choose the size of that monitor, and you can also decide whether you want to have your laptop docked or not. There will be some rules implied between the options that you can choose. For example, you cannot choose both laptop and desktop, but you need to choose at least one of them. Desktop PC or docked laptop needs a keyboard, mouse, and a monitor, because of course otherwise you wouldn't be able to use it. And if you want to use dual monitor, you need to use a wider table. So the steps will be, we will be bootstrapping the configurator using the template, which is currently in progress. Then we'll make the configurator run in the default setup. I will show you how it looks like. And then maybe I will also talk a little bit how the configurator is assembled in the code, but that's not really the purpose of this presentation, because it would take a while for you to understand how it fully works. So we will be focusing on configuring it. And then we'll move all the assets there, because I have them prepared, because it would not take 40 minutes. That would take a lot of time to find all the 3D assets, assemble them together, and also the icons and images and all this stuff. So that's prepared already. And then we will define the options and rules that connect them together. We would project the effects of whatever you choose in the configurator to the 3D model. So, for example, if you switch the color of the table in the configurator, the table should reflect it. And then we are going to do some dynamic things, like we will need a dynamic slider for the size of the display, and also we want this to be somehow projected into the 3D model. And finally, we will use Touchpoints to highlight some elements that are configurable in the 3D scene. Touchpoint is just a little point which you can touch or tap or click, so you are navigated to a proper section of the configurator. Okay, let's go. Let's do it. I mean, we can see that the template has been already created. I will open now WebStorm with this in this project. I will make it switch to presentation mode. So you can see that there's a project already been prepared. It's basically a standard create React project. So you have source and then you have index. But in this case, it's a bit more complex because we also have API there, which is pretty simple API with the Postgres database and Koa. And then we have client code, and we have also common code, which is shared between those two. So it's split here. So the index here actually points only to the client part. Here, the application is pretty simple. You see that we are using some routing provider, and then the application itself. And the application itself, again, is pretty simple. The only thing it does, it renders a configurator. And configurator is the main part of this application. It uses Salsita configurator component, provides some values to it, chooses how the stuff should look like and how it should work, and then it just works. The API, again, pretty simple. It's just a Koa router where we are importing create read router function from the API, where we pass some options, and it creates the router with all the endpoints, and we just mount it to our own router. We can mount it at any path we want. Currently, it's just using an environment variable, and then we run the API. Pretty simple as well. There are several places in the application where the important data are stored. So the first one is here. Models in public, where you got the 3D models and the textures for the 3D model. Then we have common data, and then you have here a definition of rules between all the options that we will be seeing, and we also have the same stuff or similar stuff in client data, where we are actually defining how the options should look like. I will explain this thoroughly a bit later. But let's first make the configurator run. So the first thing we need to set up a connection to database. So let's create an env file. I will use something which I prepared here already. I have prepared an empty database in my Postgres installation. So now I can run migrations, which is the first thing you need to do. These migrations are creating the only table that is actually there that is needed, and this is the table for all the configurations that will be stored in the database. And now basically we are done and we can run it. Wait for work. And the API is listening, and now create React app will kick in, and we'll build the bundle. Why is it taking so long? Okay, this will take some time, but should be relatively short-lived. Oh, I should have prepared something for this waiting period.
You promised us 40 minutes, right?
Yeah, that's it. This is exactly. This is the 40 minutes, and in the end, you will see the configurator, and then you will upload, and I will go home. Actually, I'm already home. Come on. Okay, well, let me do an intermediate, something in between. To actually save you time and save us all time, I will not be writing the code. I will be fast forwarding through time. So I will connect this project to my repository, and I will actually take the code from GitHub branch. And now I guess it's already done here, so we can see that the configurator is running. This is the standard default configurator that you will get when you bootstrap the new one. It's a chili pepper configurator. You can choose the color, even shapes, and also some things about tips and stuff. It's just to show what you can actually do with the configurator. You can make it a bit more dried or super fresh. Just some funny stuff. But we will be using this configurator as a base ground for building our own. So now let's go back to WebStorm, and let's see if I managed to actually hook the repository there. Perfect. So the first thing we will do, we will be adding assets to the application. So we can see that there's several files we'll be adding. We're actually adding some icons, some images for the options, the textures and the model itself, and icons that will be displayed in the application. Well, what we're doing here, we're just linking the model to, this is the stuff that we'll be doing. This is the current state. So we'll be changing it to actually load the proper model and also scale it properly, because the chili pepper was scaled down. The workspace doesn't need to be. And also we're linking all the icons that we just uploaded. So we create React components from them using some bubble magic, or webpack magic maybe. Unfortunately, there is one change that I didn't want, but apparently these types of node changed. They upgraded the version since yesterday, so I get a different version, but it doesn't really matter. So it's pretty hard to pick those. Actually, I don't want to move the files manually, so I will just use the commit itself directly. So I will reset hard. So right now we have all the assets. We can take a look into the configurator. It should reload. Yes, and that's exactly what I expected. So it says that we are trying to use some objects from the 3D model, like bell, tip standard, tip, and whatever, which are not there because obviously we loaded a different model and we are referencing wrong stuff from there. So the next step, actually the biggest step, is to define those options and also to remove the wrong connections. Since this is a pretty long commit, I mean, this is pretty easy, right? We're just changing text in configurator. But here, this is the configuration of the options, how they should look like in front end. This is completely different, right? So I will not go through those like this in the diff, but I will first merge the changes and then explain how the file looks like, and the same for rules. So please have a bit of patience. This is just changing the ID of the product from Pepper to workplace, because that's what we want. Oh, it should be workspace. So I will do again this reset stuff, and then we'll go into the files. So first of all, I will go to Chili. I didn't rename the file or the properties because it would add additional changes to the what's wrong? Okay. Because I would add additional changes to the history, unnecessary changes. So I just made it this way. So now let's see what we did here. What do we have here? We have a product which is called which has an ID workplace, long name workplace. It should be workspace. Sorry for that. And it uses some sections in the configurator. You know, master section is the stuff that you saw at the top of the configurator. Subsection is the stuff that you saw at the left of the configurator, and then you have option groups and options. So it's like a hierarchy of the options. So here we are actually saying what section should be opened by default. Of course, we need to format the prices somehow, and here we are defining cameras. So just an ID of the camera and its position, target, some constraints. Camera presets, which is something, which are some buttons which I will actually allow the user to use those cameras. We are putting some icons there and tooltips. And now the most important part, the options. So these are options for the color. So we will have two buttons for switching between the colors. So red one and beige one. We have an option for a large table. We have an option for upholstered chair, for laptop, for desktop, for external monitor, dual monitor setup. Please disregard this one. I will explain later. For dock station, for mouse, for plant. And that's it. Then we have option groups. So the group is like a group of options in UI. So I'm saying actually that this has a specific ID, it has a name, and then some options below to that group. So we're grouping the options somehow, which is not really relevant for understanding how the configurator works, but it makes it looks nice. So, and the subsections, the same stuff. It's again a higher hierarchy grouping, and the master sections as well. While the master sections have some additional properties, like for example, which default camera should be used, which camera presets we are allowing for that master section. So, and that's it. That's everything we have currently. It's not rocket science. It's just a bunch of data which you will need anyway for this configurator. And now let's switch to the rules, which are maybe a bit more interesting. So, you know, the configurator has a notion of models which only complicate things. So I'm not going to explain it right now. Let's say this is the product definition, product rules. So by default, the product will cost 0 because the table itself is for free, provided by Salsita. Each configuration will by default use red table and laptop. I will explain this later. And then there we have a price list of all the options. So we need to have price for all the options that we are presenting. So red costs nothing. If you want a beige, or I don't know how it's spelled, pronounced a table, you need to pay a little bit more because red is the preferred color in Salsita, right? So. And then for the rest of the options, you also see all the prices. And that's basically what we needed. So if we go now to the configurator, and I will make sure that it doesn't clash with the data. And suddenly we have the configurator. You see that we have the 3D workspace here. It's kind of weird because those two chairs are overlapping, the keyboard intersects with the laptop and all this stuff, but we will gradually solve that. So you can see that we have some master sections here, overall setup, appliance, and then within we have subsections, table, chair. We can check those. It seems to be added here in the summary, so we know how the thing costs together, how much it costs. We can theoretically make the table larger, switch between colors. Oh, this doesn't work, right? That's weird. Okay, we will fix that. Somehow this red is pre-selected, which is okay, but I cannot switch to beige, just adding beige on top of the red color. That's because we didn't set up proper rules yet. And in here we have computer, which we could switch between desktop and laptop. We have a docking station and a mouse. We have monitor setup, external monitor, dual, disregard this for now, and also a decoration where we have this plant. You see that it's not checked, but still it's visible, again, because we haven't defined any effects on the 3D model. We're just loading it as it is and not interacting with it. But that will change. So now let's go back and let's do another step here. So define rules. See, here we're changing only the rules file, nothing else. So what we do here is that we add some. No, it's wrong. Sorry. I need to use this one. Yeah, that we are going to add some more rules here. We're saying first we are defining so-called replacement groups. This is what we are saying that beige and red cannot be used together, and they are considered to be replacements of each other. And this is just a grouping ID which you can use later if you want to, for example, find out which color you have chosen to display it somewhere in summary, or use it in your eCommerce solution or whatever. Not really relevant right now. And then we also have the same for computer. You can switch only between desktop and laptop, and then you have requirements. So the docking station depends on mouse, laptop, and external monitor. It means these three need to be added whenever you want to add a docking station. Similarly for desktop. So desktop also needs mouse and external monitor, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to operate it. The keyboard is somehow implied because I didn't want to overcomplicate the setup. The dual monitor needs external monitor and needs a large table, because you need to fit those monitors on your table. And additionally, you're also saying that docking station is not compatible with desktop. So let's do that. Let's save it and go to the configurator. Now this is still broken, right? The 3D model, because we didn't do anything about it yet. But we can now choose between desktop, and you see that if I choose desktop, it asks me to add also wireless mouse and external monitor. So I can say change, mouse is added, external monitor is also added. See, if I want to remove that external monitor, I also need to remove the desktop PC. So it offers me a laptop. Cool. So it seems to work. So the rules are there, they work. If we go to the table setup, for example, we should see that if we select beige, the red is deselected. So it seems to work correctly. But still, we don't see anything in the model, and that's the ultimate thing we want to do, right? We want to see it. So let's go and do another part. So the another part is pretty simple. We will be switching on and off some objects in the 3D model based on which options we will be selecting. So for that, we need an effect. Effect is like a feature that allows you to project the changes that you make in the configuration onto the 3D model. So we'll just import it. And we need to start by hiding things, because by default, the 3D model shouldn't show all the objects, right? We should be adding them gradually when the user clicks some buttons. So we will hide basically everything right now. We will hide client, laptop, both laptop and desktop, because we'll be showing either of them based on the selection. We hide monitors, both of them, keyboard, mouse, and the office chair. So you see, instead of the office chair, we will have the regular red one. So I can save now, go to the configurator again, and we will see that the table is pretty empty. We just have the table and the chair. So now we go back and we do the next step. Okay, let's start with the upholstered chair. Why not? So whenever the upholstered chair option is selected, I want the upholstered chair actually to show up within the 3D model, and also to hide the other chair. So this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to use a feature called view effects, which is already something I described, and I want to apply an object visibility effect. And when applying it, I want to show the office chair object, but I want to hide the chair object. So if I save it now and go back to the configurator, we should be able to switch to chairs. Hey, it works. And now let's do the same stuff with all the other options. So laptop is pretty easy, right? We just show laptop because by default, both laptop and desktop is hidden, so we don't need to hide anything. The same here in desktop, we just show the desktop, but we also show keyboard, because without keyboard you cannot already operate the desktop computer. And there is no specific option for keyboard because I didn't want to overcomplicate things, so we were showing it together with the desktop. Monitors, easy peasy, right? You just display monitor 1, monitor 2. In case of dual monitor, you already expect that the external one will be shown because that's what we described in the rules. So we just display the monitor 2 because the first one is already displayed. Okay, if we dock, then we need keyboard. If we have mouse, we should show mouse. If we select plant, we should show plant. Save, reload, and we have laptop. We have mouse. And we can now go to appliance, computer. We can dock. Oh, that's not really convenient, right? It still overlaps, but we'll solve it eventually, don't worry. Okay, we can also choose desktop. That's also not convenient, right? Because you don't see that actually where the desktop is, because, well, but this is the default position, right? So it's hard to see it, but we will solve that as well. We will actually solve it with the very next step, because it's pretty easy. What we do, we just define a different camera. Let's call it desktop camera, desktop PC, whatever PC. For now, it's desktop, and we set up a target. Target is basically within the desktop PC case. And position is a little bit away from it, so we can look at it, some constraint for zooming. And then we link this camera to the desktop option, like this. We save, we go to the configurator, and now we have laptop and we switch to desktop. Suddenly, ooh, we see the desktop. We switch back to laptop, we see laptop. Pretty easy and pretty wow effect, at least as I see it. Oh no, that's not, okay. So next step. What's the next step? Next step is following. I mean, you saw that if I dock, for example, I have this overlapping laptop with my keyboard, which is pretty bad. And if I do dual monitor setup, is actually not doing anything. It actually does because it shows the monitor, but those monitors have exactly the same position, so they are overlapping. So we need to solve that. So we need to move objects around the scene, right? If we choose dual monitor, one of them should go left and the second one should go right. So the keyboard should stay there, but the laptop should go somewhere else where it doesn't intercept. So we will do some basic static transformations. We will use another effect for that, which is called object transformation. Again, wrong diff, sorry. We will use another effect, object transformation effect. So we'll import it. And yeah, let's probably start with something simpler. Yeah, for example, this stuff here. Dock. So whenever I choose dock, we already have one effect where we show the keyboard, but we should then move the laptop out of the keyboard, right? So that's how we do it through this effect where we say affected objects is the laptop, and we should translate that object. We translate it half a meter to the left and 30 centimeters far from the person sitting on the chair. So let's go back to the configurator now, and you see that it's there. It's moved. It doesn't intersect with the keyboard anymore. Cool. The monitors, though, they're still pretty bad, right? So let's go back. Where am I? Here. So the next, there should be the diff somewhere. Here. So the next stuff that we'll do, let's make the table larger. So if we select the large table, what do we need to do? We need to enlarge the table. That's the first step. So we will use scale for that. So we're actually saying that it should be 50% longer. And we also need to move it a little bit because we want it to be aligned with the center of the space. I mean, you have the legs of the table, so they should be in the center, right? So we're going to move it relatively, which means this is 25% of the original size. So we're inflating it 50%, so we're moving it 25% to the left, which should do the trick. And of course, we should probably keep the blend whenever it's chosen at the corner of the table, at the edge of the table. So we're moving it 30 centimeters right when the larger table is selected. So if I save it, I go here, and now the table is large. And you see, if I go to overall setup, I should be able to switch between those. I got the confirmation dialog because I had the dual monitor setup, and of course, dual monitor setup is not compatible with the small table. But you see, it works. And if I add the blend, it should be located in the corner of the table, no matter whether the table is big or small. No, sorry. Yeah. Oops, it's moving accordingly. So let's now do other stuff. Okay, dual monitor. What we need to do to show those monitors, we need to move them, right? As I said already, one needs to move to left and one needs to move to right. So that's exactly what this piece of code does. This one moves it 30 centimeters to the left, and this one moves it 30 centimeters to the right. You see, it's monitor 1, monitor 2. So I go back again to configurator. Yes, I want to reload. And now we enable multi-monitor support. Ooh, yeah, cool. Still not perfect, right? The docked laptop is now intersecting with the monitor. How could we do that? Well, for this case, we will need some kind of a dynamic transition. It's no longer static. It needs to reflect the selections in the configurator. I need to drink. So that's exactly the next step. We'll be adding simple dynamic transformation. This is I guess this is the only one. Yeah. So this is very, very simple. You can see that the translate can either take a vector, or actually a partial vector. By the way, this undefined means do not change, please, this coordinate. And also it leaves it to other effects, so they can also influence this if needed. So we just I'll just merge it and then show it. We'll just do following things. We're providing a function that can generate this. And the function takes two parameters. One is the information about the selected option, about the particular selected option, in this case dock, which we do not really care about because we want to know whether the dual monitor is enabled. So we have this other thing, which is a map of selected options. So we just look it up by name or by ID. And if that option is selected, we're moving it 80 centimeters. Otherwise, we just move it 50 centimeters, which is pretty easy, but does the job. Sorry, yeah. So as you can see, we now have the laptop moved accordingly. If I switch off dual monitor support, I have it closer to me, which works nice. Next step is okay. Let's make a little bit of introduction. Okay, well, we said that we want the user to be able to set his the size of his screen, right? So this there should be a slider somewhere where he can move, and then the screen should adjust accordingly. So let's do that. So let's first have a slider. This is exactly why this option is here, because we'll be using an option to actually store the value of the slider. We will be using an extra option, display size, in case if the summary is displayed here, so it's not perfect. We could theoretically bundle it together with the monitor option, but for simplicity, this is the easiest way to show how it works. So the only thing is we need to define a component which will actually render this slider. There is already one slider here in the default setup, but it's a bit more complicated. So I will create a new one. Let's call it display size slider 36. Yeah, let's leave it empty and use again our magical Git to actually populate it. So what we're doing here, we'll just use everything, is that we have a component which takes special props which are defined by the SDK. And though this component takes the selection info, which is information about the option which is currently selected, and it can get the values from that option, or it can get the default values when they are defined. And then we are actually pulling a single property of those values, which is called, in our case, diagonal. This is the property that will contain the diagonal size of the monitor. So it's like 24 inch, 21 inch, 15 inch, or whatever. The values of the option are always objects, so you need to have nested values. We decided on that together with the team, but I don't know. Let's see if that works. Well, so we're using a hook from the Spicy Hooks package, which is just selecting that property and working with that property instead of with the same object. So you can probably disregard this. The important thing is here is just pretty simple range input. So it's a slider where we have some constraints defined. We have the value and we're setting the value, nothing else. And then we need to use this slider somewhere. So we go to our definition of the product and we import it, and we also make sure that it's linked to the display size option. Now if I go to here, I see here the slider. Something is wrong here because it says there is this inch sign, actually double quote, but it just doesn't display any value. That's because we need also a default value for this stuff. So we go to the rules again. So these are the rules, and in the rules we specify default value for the display size option, which is diagonal 24. Now it should start looking well. Looks well. So if I move it now, see stored. If I refresh, it's not shaped yet. If I refresh now, it stays there. So the value is stored along with the configuration. Of course, it doesn't do anything yet because we didn't tell it to do anything. So we go back. We're done for this step. So we go to the next step, which is adding complex dynamic transformations. So we'll be using this value, this diagonal size, to actually influence the size of the monitors. And we do it again through this complex. Well, maybe we start somewhere where it is a little bit. Yeah, maybe here. So here, the display size option, when it's selected, we want, well, it's actually changing. The value is changing. It's always selected. That's why it was also included in the default options. So when it changes, we want to affect the 3D model. So we want to affect monitor 1 and monitor 2, and we want to scale them, right? So we have the diagonal value, which is taken from the selected option, and we say that we want to scale it accordingly. The default one is 24 inches. I mean, the model itself should be 24 inches, so we're just scaling it down or up based on what actual size we have. And we also need to translate it a little bit, so it doesn't go under the table, because the center of the object is in the, at the center of the scaling is center of the object. So if you scale it up, then it goes under the object. If you scale it down, then it flies, hovers. So we need to move it accordingly, and that should do it. Yeah, it does that. You see, the problem is that they are either too far from each other, or they are overlapping. So we need to do one more tweak here. You see, this is the dual monitor setup, and in this case, we are translating by a static value, saying 30 centimeters and 30 centimeters. We need to have this value dynamic based on the display size. So we're grabbing the display size option from all the selected options. We're making a nasty cast. We should probably come up with a better API for this stuff, but this is really a work in progress. And we're getting the diagonal value with the default 24, and making sure that it's adjusted accordingly. I mean, it's not only static 30 centimeters, but it's multiplied with the with the scale of the monitor. And the same thing we will do for the second monitor, and then it should work correctly. So we can enlarge, we can make them smaller. You see that it's still not entirely perfect, because the laptop is hidden behind the monitor a bit if it's big enough. But yeah, but it will be actually the reality. So you should deal with it. You should know about that. Okay, that's basically mostly everything I wanted to show. Just one more comment about this stuff. You can see that the more complex the transformation and all the effects go, the weirder it looks in here. So I'm thinking about an alternate API which could solve these issues, because you would have one logic and feed it to multiple effects using some React 3 fiber components, but that's future, and I need to first validate my ideas. Okay, the last thing that I wanted to show you is it's not the last thing. Is there's this? Okay, that would be pretty a shame if I don't do what I promised. I promised you that you can have beige or brown, let's say, like brown table, and it's not working, right? I mean, it's still red even though I select the brown one. So we need to apply a color effect. So we do it through this new effect, which is called material parameters effect, because we'll be changing a parameter of a material. We'll be changing the color. So again, we're using view effects, saying we want material parameters effect. We want to affect this particular material, which is in the 3D scene, and we want to adjust its color to this stuff. And that's enough for the configurator. Pick it, and we have a brown one, which is not really brown, but and we can switch, and you see there's a fancy animation in between the colors, so the color is even animated. Great. The last thing I wanted to show you is the touchpoints. So I said that the touchpoints are a way how to give the user some guidelines, what he should click in order to configure his product. So we start with a simpler one. We're linking those touch points currently to the subsections. This table, chair, computer, monitor, decoration, the stuff that is on the left-hand side of the screen. And it's pretty easy. We just say in which place in the space, which point in the space, this touch point should be displayed. So currently displaying it in these coordinates. So if I go here, I see here this touch point, you see. And if I close everything and I go here and click it, then the section opens so I can directly influence my table. I can do the same for chair, for computer, monitor, and decoration. You see, there are only 2 of them right now because, by the way, this stuff is a bit broken because there was an ongoing refactoring of the touch points, and it's not yet finished. But you see, there are only 2 of them, and the reason is because if we would put here a computer touch point, where would it lead? There is no such thing in this master section, so the touch points will be displayed here when you're in the second section. So here you can choose monitor and influence how the monitor looks like. You can choose computer and influence how the computer is set up and decorations. So yeah, I know I went a bit fast, but the purpose was not really to give you a full information on how to do everything that we just did. I wanted to show you that it can be done, and it can be done relatively easily. So that's it. That's everything from the demo, from the live demo, and yeah, but there's more. There's definitely a lot more. We're constantly working on new features. Currently, we are doing completely dynamic generation of 3D models for Kilo. So we have the furniture is computed on the fly. We have full screen features. We have mobile. Mobile. Maybe I'll show you also that you can get for free, completely for free. Mobile version, which works reasonably well. There are currently some issues with styling because it's just an alpha version, and we are in the middle of changing everything. But as you can see, it's pretty neat. I mean, you select it, the stuff zooms out, so you can still see it. You can change things. Sorry, click sensor. You can change things. You can change colors. You can change the chair, whatever, in the same way as you would do it on desktop. But it works out of the box. Okay, this is full screen. So again, there's more, and I would like you to tell me whether you will be interested in hearing more about it, and actually what. If you want more details about what you just saw, how to set it up, more hands-on experience, so we could just do a kind of a workshop if what you want. If you want to see more features, or if you don't want to see anything about Configurator anymore because you're fed up with it. Just want to hear your feedback. Doesn't need to be now, but feel free to reach out to me via Slack and tell me. Okay, so I guess I will now open the Slido stuff. There doesn't seem to be anything. So nobody has any question, or am I? What do you?
I sent you a second link. You can use the second link.
Yeah, will be good. Okay. Okay, what is the distortion when you're zoomed from the perspective of setting? Okay, that's something which I can show. This is a field of view thing of the camera, because if I wouldn't change the field, I can actually demonstrate that. If I go to Chile and I have my camera here at the top, point of view camera, and if I say I don't want to change the field of view, then it will use the default one, and you will see You basically don't see much from the table. It's just pretty limited view. So you have this field of view option, which of course makes the camera distorted. So it's like a fish lens in your camera a bit. And that's also why it then looked kind of weird when you were switching between the cameras, because the field of view was also animated, so it also changes. Okay. Can I just remove that question somehow? No, I don't think so. Are there any special requirements for the 3D models? Well, the 3D models currently can be must be in GLFT format or GLTF format. Which
GLTF.
Yeah, thanks. So that's basically the only requirement, and also, of course, there are some limitations in Three.js which we are using to load these models and display them. So it doesn't support all the materials and all the options that you can think about. For example, these monitors that I have here look differently in Blender. They have some different textures and different settings. So you need to be careful a bit when designing the models. But it's not really a problem of the configurator. It's a problem of Three.js and also the browser, what the browser supports. Well, the browser supports relatively everything if you are able to write your own shaders, but that would be kind of hard. Actually, Honza Bartnik wrote several shaders, but it's something you shouldn't be doing on a regular basis. And another requirement, of course, it needs to be small, right? And you should not load 50 megabytes or 100 megabytes into your browser, so you should optimize it. The stuff that I'm using currently is not optimized, and I think it has like 14 megabytes or something, because I just downloaded models from the internet. Some of them are low polygon, some of them are high polygon, so it's just a mixture, and textures also take some space. And of course that adds up, and then you have weird user experience when the user needs to wait for a while until the objects are loaded. Is it possible to set the position relative to other objects? No, currently there is no such thing. In general, the notion of objects within the 3D scene is not really implemented in any way. I mean, I tried, before this presentation, I tried doing something where you can, when you can define dimensions of the object, and it will actually recalculate this to scale, because but for that you need to measure the dimensions of the object first, and that you need to do with the bounding box, and the bounding box can misbehave, and so you never know whether it works correctly. So there's no such thing right now, but it would definitely be interesting. I'm kind of thinking about other approach for the view effects in general, so it would be more declarative approach across all the options. So you have a different place where you specify all these effects, but you specify them together. So all the calculations that you do it only once, and then you can reuse it. So, because right now, you saw if I change one thing, I need to change several locations, which is what I want to do. But the answer is no. With increasing a number of mobile resizable objects, the configuration to make sure they don't overlap can get really complicated very fast. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Honestly, the moving, the transformation feature was born this week. So there wasn't even a way how to move the objects on the scene prior to that, because we didn't need it for the car configurator, and we need it for the kilo, but the kilo is completely dynamic, so we're generating all the objects ourselves and positioning them properly as we need them, and we don't use the view effects. But yeah, sure, this can be pretty bad stuff. But as I said, if there is everything inside one file, I guess, inside one place, and the calculations are in one place, I guess it will be a little bit more maintainable. But of course, that's not perfect. A solution that would come to mind is some kind of a collision detection. But what does it mean? How do you react when you move it? You move it so that it interferes, and then what if it's interfering? You place it before or after? There are decisions which you need to take. And the thing is, the configurator should not be completely dynamic. You know, you're not moving your objects via your mouse. You're always reflecting whatever the configuration has, and the configuration should take into account all the possible combinations, which is, of course, with more options, harder. So yeah, and the answer for this is we don't manage this. You saw it. If I wouldn't translate the objects manually, the collisions would happen. So there's no automatic management of the collisions. But as I said, nobody is moving the objects for you. It's always predefined and pretty limited, at least now. I mean, if there would be a project where you can break it easily with the configuration, we will consider implementing some features like that. Okay. No more questions? Okay. Thank you very much for your attention.